Hello and welcome, this is Eagle-Eye621, and today we are back in my armor testing world now that the full 1.16 Java has been released for a video about the best enchantments and best armor that you can get in Minecraft. Now if you've seen some of my earlier videos about the diamonds, some of this will be a little bit duplicative, so I will have some links down below for some timestamps to jump ahead for what's going on. Let's get started with some armor types, which will be very quick. Then we can go for the enchantments and what those mean, as well as the combinations that you're looking for and the reasons, and we'll also have some bonuses in there of things that can help you out along the way. Before I get started, if I could ask you to just scroll down and hit that subscribe button. It is free and does help me out, and that way you won't miss these future videos. Also be sure to hit that bell. So now let's talk about the armor types, and of course this is going to be very quick. You have your leather, your gold, your chainmail, which you can't make but you can get from drops, followed by your iron, diamond, and then netherite, and this is shown in order of which armor is the best and the strongest. Note that there is a turtle shell down here, which is kind of in between because it behaves more like the iron, but it does give you some underwater breathing abilities, a couple of seconds, 10 seconds at that, but really not worth doing. There are potions that are going to be better for you, so you are going to want to stick to the netherite armor. But the question is, what kind of protections do you want to put on this netherite armor? And that is where all of these colors come into play. So let me explain to you what you are looking at. There are three different types of protection. You have your projectile protection, your blast protection, and your fire protection. And I've just represented those in white for the projectile because of skeletons, the green for the creeper, meaning your blast protection, and the red fire is your fire protection. Now you can have up to 20 enchantment points before they stop counting. So if you look, there are 20 slots here that you can fill with your enchantment, and this black bar at the top just indicates the maximum. You can do things that get you above that black bar, but they stop having any real help. Now we're going to be talking specifically about protection 4, fire protection 4, blast protection 4, and projectile protection 4, because there's no reason to do anything less than that if you're going for the best. And the way that those enchanted protections work is, as you can see right here, if you have a blast protection 4, that will give you 8 slots of protection, but only covering your blast protection. The same holds true for fire and protection. You double the number, but it's only for that specific enchantment protection. So your projectile protection 4 gives you 8 points of protection, but only 2 projectiles. Your general protection will give you a slot across of each. So your protection 4 will give you 4 slots on the fire, 4 slots on the blast, and 4 slots on the projectile. So you can see this is one of each, and this right here is just your protection. And then to make things a little bit easier, I've just compressed it. Each one of these boxes now represents 4. So you can see we have 5 of them, and 4 times 5 would get you the 20. And now we have some math with Eagle-Eye621. And this representation is the same over here. For a blast protection 4, that will give you 2 of these slots, covering 2 of the possible 5. And for a normal protection, it will give you 1 across of all of them. So now, in terms of what the best possible armor you can have in the game, that goes to the God Armor. Now, God Armor was only possible in Java 1.14.1 and 1.14.2. I did make a video about how to get it if you're after that, but this is the effect of that God Armor. So you can see that we have some netherite God Armor, and it has the projectile protection, blast, fire, and normal protection all on the same piece. and that's true for all of these. So what that does is you have 4 of the normal protections, which you can see across the bottom right here, and you also have 4 of each of the specialty protections. So you can see we have these 2, 4, 6, and 8. Some more counting with Eagle Eye 621. And you can see this is way above the maximum bar, meaning all of this extra protection up here really isn't adding anything. But it's just something that you have. The reason that this God Armor is particularly overpowered is because even with only one of these pieces, you basically max out your potential armor with other normal armor. So if you want to do something a little bit more simple, it looks like this, and this just has your protection on each of these pieces, but you will note that these boots also have fire, that these leggings also have blast. This one doesn't have anything, but this one has projectile protection 4. So it's just 1 each, and you can see again that we have maxed out our protection, and we have 1 of each, which gets us to that bar, which is again even extra from what you need. But now let's move past God Armor and talk about more conventional armor you can get and exactly what kind of enchantments that you would like to put on your armor. And we can see that in these 4 groupings. So this right here is my first recommendation for the best armor that you can get with enchantments in your typical game without any God Armor shenanigans. And that's just to have protection 4 on each of your pieces of armor. And that doesn't max out any of them, but it does get you reasonably close to all of them. Now, some people think, well, let me put fire protection on one, let me put blast protection on one, and let me put projectile protection on one and another protection, and this is the result. Because you have the protection across the bottom, you have your fire, you have your blast, and you have your projectile, and you may notice that it is less than if you just did all protection. Because essentially, protection gets you 3 slots, it's 1 for each, while the specialty gets you 2 slots specifically in that specialty. So if you use even 2 of your specialties, right, I'm more concerned about blast and fire than I am about protection. So I'm going to go with 2 protections, and then 1 fire and 1 blast, and you can see that you end up with less overall than your just 4 protection because you're missing the projectile, which you do have in this. So again, this is my first recommendation, is for all of them to have protection 4 on them. This is specifically for if you are wearing a chest plate. I will get to the wings in a moment. Now, I do have a second suggestion for a potential best option, but this is a lot more specific to your particular gameplay and your location. You can see we have 3 protections on this, and then we have 1 specialty protection. In this case, we chose fire. And what that does is it gives you, again, reasonable protection, and then you do actually max out 1 of the specialties. So in this example, you are sacrificing 1 slot of blast and 1 slot of projectile to make sure you get an extra of fire. Now, why might you want to do something like this? If you are playing a lot in the Nether, having this 5th slot could be potentially very helpful, where you're not as worried about anything exploding because you're not going to find too many creepers in the Nether. And generally speaking, projectiles are the least of your concerns in terms of your 3 different types of damage. Now, you can also do the same thing with blast protection. If instead of this fire protection, you replaced it with a blast protection, you would just end up moving these 2 slots over here, and you would max out on your explosion protection at the sacrifice of 1 slot of fire and 1 slot of projectile. But it is important to understand here that you can only do this for 1. Your choice in terms of maxing out your protection is either to go all with your normal protection or to pick 1 of the specialties and the other 3 become the normal. If you try and do 2 specialties, then again, you just end up worse than if you had left it all at protection. So this is highly based on your game. If you have a mob switch, for example, and creepers and skeletons aren't an issue because they don't even spawn, then you're looking for something to max out your fire. Now, this is specifically if you're using all 4 pieces of armor, meaning you're wearing a chest plate. But what happens if you are going to wear wings? So now we're going to come over to the other side and talk about what we can do if we're concerned because we only get 3 pieces of armor. And the situation is very similar to that side. My general first choice recommendation is to tell you to, again, go all with your normal protection. So that's protection on your shoes, your pants, and your helmet. Because you're wearing wings, there's no protection on this. And that will cover 3 slots across each of them. Now, if you tried to do something like all of your specialties again, right? 1 fire, 1 projectile, and 1 blast, then this is what you end up with, which you can see is worse than just doing all 3 of protection. Now, again, there is a second first choice, which is a thing, because I'm making it a thing, where you can pick 1 specifically to max out on. So in this example, we have 2 of the normal protections, and we chose 1 blast protection, and that gets us closer to the top, but not all the way. And you can see that we have sacrificed 1 block of the fire and 1 block of the projectile in order to get 1 extra block of the blast protection. And the reason that this may be something that you'd want to do, again, is because of creepers and one-shotting. And we'll do some testing over there in a moment where you'll see exactly what that means. But before I go and do some testing, let me also just point out that there are some mitigators to all of these things to keep in mind. You can find them in these chests, which you're probably thinking of already. You have your potion of fire resistance or your noob juice potions. I'm not ashamed to say when I'm playing in my survivor world, I always keep one of these in my inventory because I don't want to have to recreate all of my tools and armor. Also a shield, which you can put unbreaking and mending on, and this is primarily for your projectile defense, also against creepers, but you do need to be able to see them, which can be an issue. And then generally speaking, your totem of undying in case you do get one shot. And that is the reason why you may consider doing this blast protection instead of the normal protection, is to protect against getting one-shotted by a creeper. So now that we have all of that explanation out of the way, actually let me show you one more thing. Just in case you're wondering about all of the best enchantments for your netherite, let me just give you some screenshots that you can take in terms of putting the best possible enchantments on your armor. This is not the god armor. This is what you're going to want for your helmet. You're going to want your mending, your protection 4, unbreaking 3, respiration 3, and aqua affinity. For your chest plate, it's a little bit simpler. It's your mending, protection, and unbreaking. The pants look identical to the chest plate. And your shoes are going to be a little bit different because you do want to make sure you have your mending, protection, unbreaking, feather falling, and soul speed. You can choose between Depth Strider and Frostwalker. I much prefer the Depth Strider, but do be aware that you can make this exact copy, but instead of the Depth Strider, replace that with Frostwalker. And these are the enchantments that you're going to want to get if you don't have any god armor and don't want to do any god armor shenanigans to get. Let me also briefly mention some dark horses in here. So I did say that your netherite armor is going to be the best. I know if I don't mention this, we'll see some in the comments. Piglins will attack you if you don't have a gold piece of armor. That said, I still think it's not really worth it, except for maybe very early game. If you open a chest or you try and find some gold, they'll attack you anyways, and the Piglin Brute will attack you whether or not you have gold armor, and it is just rather weak. Your weapons and your just general ability to run away should be much better than sacrificing one of your pieces of armor for the gold. But that is your choice. And as long as I am mentioning God armor, let me also mention that you can get some glitched out armor from the skeletons that spawn from lightning. The trap skeletons sometimes do show up with double protection armor. That armor does actually stack. So depending on the version of your game you're playing, that's an option. But typically those don't have mending on them, and typically, unless you set up a really crazy farm, the odds of you coming across one are very small. So that's also not really something that you should consider unless you do manage to make one of those crazy farms and really just stick to the netherite. So now, what am I talking about in terms of these bonus? So we have a couple of things in this chest, and as you can see, if we want to grab some protection with some legs and feet, and we'll put on some elytra, and then we can also grab some creeper eggs, a little bit of steak, although I don't think that'll be necessary. And the problem with the 3 protections here, when you talk about your explosions, is if you have a creeper that explodes next to you, you're going to die. And it's hard to mitigate from an instant death. So you can sometimes pull out a shield in time, although if it falls down on you from above, you may not even have that option. So sometimes, if you're going to be flying around in the world, you may want to grab your protection, some extra protection, and then some blast protection. And what happens now, and I'm not going to grab any food, if we go back into survival mode, and we go back into the same place, and we drop a creeper in the same place, you don't die. So you're sacrificing some protection from projectiles, and you are sacrificing some fire protection in the name of not getting one-shotted by a creeper. And in terms of that projectile protection, I am still going to wear just the blast protection with the normal protection on these 2 pieces. Now, these skeletons have been equipped with power 5 bows, and you can see even with power 5 bows, even with only 2 bits of protection, they really don't do a whole lot of damage to you. I don't have a shield, I'm not running around. You can even see if they hit you in the wrong time, then one of the arrows might even just bounce off. And they can kill you eventually, but you have plenty of time to run away, plenty of time to take out a shield, plenty of time to do a lot of things, which is why I said that your, generally speaking, projectiles are not going to be your issue. What is going to be your issue is the fire. So now let me switch over into creative mode so I can fly over here and grab one of these potions, although I don't know if I'm actually going to use it. And now if we go back into survival mode, we only have the blast protection with the 2 normal protections again. And let's see how much time we have in lava. So we're fully eaten and jump in. You can see that the lava does kill you reasonably quickly, but that should be enough time to grab a potion and drink it if you were interested in surviving and not demonstrating something on a YouTube video. So we can do that one more time real quick, just so you can see with the different fully back to life, everything's in the maxed out. The elytra burned. If you did not know, netherite will not burn in lava, which is a great thing. In case you die in lava, you can still get your stuff sometimes. If we jump into survival mode, again, 2 protections and the blast, you have a decent amount of time to drink a potion. And then the lava doesn't become an issue for you anymore. Now, let's switch back to creative mode here for a moment and get rid of all this. And let me also grab some milk to get rid of this fire resistance. So you can see in terms of your fire resistance, what difference that will make for you. So if I grab the normal protection, we can do this roughly like so. If you're going for the 1 extra fire protection, how does that look? And let's put that on and go back into survival. And let's not cheat the test. So let's make sure we're properly healed and not hungry. And now we can jump back in. And you can see that we have a significantly more amount of time, even just with that 1 piece of fire protection instead of blast. So that is really a lot of time to be able to grab that potion or ender pearl out of the lava if you're flying around in the nether. But that's also not the only option, because this also was again using only the 3 pieces. If we use our mix and match for not wearing wings, and the location of the enchantments don't matter, so don't pay attention to what I'm grabbing and where. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. The fire protection on your boots does the same as on your legs, but you can see if we have the regular protections here and then 1 fire protection here, this is our example of this right here. So we're maxing out on the fire. And something very interesting happens when you max out on the fire with your armor. And let's replenish that, grab some food, replenish these as well. And now, in survival mode, we can just kind of hang out in the lava for a while. So we have our protection, 1 fire, and 1 normal, and we can actually eat and heal faster than the lava will kill us. And also, if you didn't know, netherite doesn't take any fire damage. So if this was diamond armor, your armor would be getting beat up right now. But without that, you can actually swim in lava until you run out of food, which is pretty nice. Now, do keep in mind that it's not just the enchantments that matter, but the armor itself matters. So let me jump out of this pool and grab, instead of these protection from the feet, let's grab some fire protection so that it looks like this. Now, what we have here is we have 2 of the fire protections, which would be 18, because again, it's double. So 4 and then 8, and then you double that for 16. Another 4 is 20, and another 4 is 24. So this is above the maximum you can have for fire. I'm doing that specifically for a reason. You will notice that we don't take the fire damage in any concerning quantity, and we can still eat our way out of it. But now what's going to happen is I'm going to remove 1 piece of armor, and it's going to be one of the protections, and that means we still have the 20 bits of enchantment protection, but you may notice that the lava is doing a little bit more damage and a little bit faster damage than it was before. However, if you see that we're eating right now, we're eating almost to full, almost, but not quite. And even just removing that little bit of armor means that even though it's only your head, and this does make a difference on this part in some armor 6, armor 8, armor 3, and armor 3, that extra armor does matter. So it's not just the enchantments, and now you will eventually die from burning in lava. You will live for a long time. You can see that eating is replenishing most of your hearts, but every eating cycle you lose another half or full heart. So wearing all of the armor does make a bit of difference in that regard. Now, I didn't mention on our perfect armor that you can make now normally, which I showed over here. I also may get a couple of comments. I didn't put Thorns on it. Thorns is definitely an option that you can add to your armor. Just note that the Thorns will cause more durability damage to occur to your armor, as when it damages mobs, it will also damage your armor, which isn't a problem if you have a decent mending setup. But some people don't like it because if you're trying to lure mobs into places, they may accidentally kill you, or they can have other effects if the mobs get injured that you did not want them to have. Just because it's fun, let me show you what full-on blast protection looks like. So again, if we just have 3 of our normal protections and a blast protection, that would be 3 times 4, which is 12, and then 8, which is 20. So this maxes out your blast protection. And when your blast protection is maxed out, you can do fun things like going into survival mode and punching an end crystal, although it would help if I wasn't already damaged. So let's try that again without being damaged. And now, because we're fully healed, you should be able to punch an end crystal and survive. Do keep in mind that with all explosives, proximity is a major factor. So if we grab some of these healing potions, even with this maximum armor, if you are directly inside the end crystal, this story is going to end a little bit differently. But the ability to punch an end crystal at all from any range is a little crazy and does require that blast resistance. You're not going to come across an end crystal mostly worrying about the creepers, which is why with the wings, you may want to do the extra blast protection in the overworld and switch to an extra fire protection in the nether, unless you're just going to go with your bog standard 3 protections. So now, if you've ever seen any of my other videos that take place in my armor testing world, you will know that there is only one proper way to end this video, and that is by putting on some very cheaty god armor. Of course, this wasn't actually cheated in. You can get this in vanilla, as I mentioned, and paying a visit to a aptly named Charge Creeper and seeing what happens to us. Charge Creeper to the face, fully survivable with the right kind of armor and enchantments. If you found this video helpful, I would appreciate a like, found it interesting, maybe even share it with one of your friends. And for more videos like this, do be sure to subscribe. I will, of course, be updating my tools and weapons for 1.16 now with Netherite, and there is some interesting new advice based on the weapons specifically, and some interesting information about the tools that you don't want to miss. Thanks for stopping by.